All right, so playing as white again. White is down some material, so he's got two rooks, and right now, one pawn, or I'm sorry, two bishops and a pawn for the rook. So two minors for the rook is generally a bad exchange for me on the white side. But let's see what we have here. Looks like I'm going to be trying to force a mate. Right now he's threatening, black is threatening the f3 pawn, which would be mate for black. So I need to, well, lead to mate, I guess, depending on where I move the queen, because right now he could take with the bishop, take with the queen, take with the queen, and I would just be down too much material. So let's look at forcing moves. So pawn takes obviously is the first one to look at. So h takes g4. King would have to come down to h4. H takes g4, king to h4. I don't have any more checks, right? No more checks. Then I would have to defend that pawn, and there's no way to defend that pawn. So that doesn't look good. So what about, oh, well, the queen's not defended. So if I just do, oh, I can't take. So I want to take f takes g4 with a discovery on the queen winning f2. But that doesn't work because the pawn's pinned. So is there a way for me to get rid of that pawn? I'm sorry, the bishop. A way for me to get rid of the bishop. Not immediately. I can pin it. No, the queen's defending the c5 square. So let's look what happens if I take with the queen. So I can't take with the f pawn. So if I take queen takes g4, king h6. King h6. They're still threatening to take that f3 pawn. King h6. If I just move pawn g4, threatening mate, he takes g6. With the bishop, I have to give up my queen. That doesn't look very good. Queen takes, king h6. So there's another check back to f4. King back to h5. Okay, I'm losing it there. Let's see. Okay, so queen takes, king h6, queen takes g4, king h6, queen f4, king h5. Not seeing it. Usually there's something obvious that I'm just missing. So could it be just a perpetual? I can go back. He goes back. I go back. Oh no, he can just block with the pawn. He can just block with the pawn. I mean, if I move queen back to f4, he can just go pawn g5. Then I have a check on d6. King back. Okay, what am I missing here? Queen takes g4, king h6. Oh. No, I can't go queen h4. That would be mate. But I can't because the queen's defending it. I've got to just be missing something, huh? Pawn takes doesn't work because king h4. I've got nothing there. F takes doesn't work. The F pawn's pinned. Queen takes. I don't see what to do. Queen takes, king h6. The problem is that F pawn is just so weak. I'm going to be forced around. I don't see how I get away from the mate. Those bishops come to life. See, if I take with the queen, king h6, queen f4, pawn down, pawn g5, queen d6, king h5. I'm out of checks. Oh, but it wins the bishop, huh? So that that solves my bishop problem, right? Or else he gets a perpetual. So I can get a perpetual if it's queen g4, king h6, queen f4, king h5, queen g4, and perpetual. So he has to block with the pawn. If he blocks with the pawn, queen f4, pawn g5, I have queen d6, winning the bishop, right? Winning the bishop, defending that, the f3 pawn. So I think I get the perpetual or the pawn. Is that enough? I'm sorry, the perpetual or the bishop. I think that's just I just don't see anything else. I mean, the rook is just so out of play. Doesn't have time to get in anywhere. C5 squares, I mean, that's what I see. So I've been looking at this for a long time. Let's see what we got. Puzzle failed, obviously. And there we go, back to lost 103. So let's view the solution. So pawn, king down. What did I miss? Pawn discovery. King back, mate. This is the stuff. Why I'm rated so low. Seems so obvious once you click continue, but I just looked at that puzzle for so long, I was losing it. All right, let's try again. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Okay, have a little tea, shake it off. Find the move for black. So pawn has white has a really dangerous pawn there on a7. Black has some dangerous pawns, connected passers. So first, let's look at taking the rook on c1. There's no good check, queen check, because the rook can just defend at all. So let's see. Queen takes c1. Check. Rook takes c1. Then I can get the pawn on a7. Rook takes a7. What about just rook takes a7 right now? Rook takes a7, queen takes, rook takes, rook takes. That leaves the rook hanging. So queen takes c1 at the end of that, no good. So rook takes, queen moves. rook takes a1, rook takes a1, pawn queens. So, no. Rook takes a7, queen moves. Rook takes a1, rook takes a1, rook takes a1. So it looks like he has to take with the queen. I think that's just a lot of material. This looks too easy. Am I missing anything? There's no good checks for him, right? There's a check on c1, but I take with the rook. If he moves that rook, you can't attack my queen. You could go knight c4, right? So rook B takes a7. Knight c4. Takes queen, takes rook. I think that just wins a lot of material. I don't really see the danger here. I didn't consider that, but I don't really think it matters, right? Trade the queens and then trade down on a1. Just not even trade down, just win a rook. Queen takes, knight takes, rook takes a1. Yeah. Queen takes, knight takes, rook takes a1. He takes here, I take here. This is just over. Black wins. Okay, well, so there we go. Looking down here on the bottom, 4 gets before I miss that easy looking discovery, and then come back with the blue. I don't know what the blue means actually. Let's see if I hit continue training. Does it turn green? Okay, it doesn't turn green. So 5 out of 6 right now. Rating at 1878. I don't know how long this stream has been going, but I'll do a couple more. I figure I would just go until I want to stop. So black to play. Rook down on h6. White rook down on h6. Got some pressure against the knight and the c6 pawn. For example, if I move the knight, say I could just, any move. Knight takes. It's obviously not a good move. Oh, not obviously, but doesn't look like a good move. Then he could obviously take back. But this bishop, my point is that none of that works. Don't pay any attention to what I just said. Okay, let's try and look. I'm not trying to teach people. Leave that to John Bartholomew. Go watch his streams, his videos, if you want to learn something. These videos are more just for me. So let's see what we got. Pushing the pawn. What does that do? Pushing the e-pawn, I mean. e4, it's protected, so he can't take, because he's got to move the bishop. You'd have to move it back somewhere. Although the knight is not protected, right? So his f2 knight is not protected. So if I move my knight, let's say d7, he'd have to move his knight. What about g8? Backwards knight moves. I've heard a bunch of times that backwards knight moves are the hardest ones to see. Let's see. Knight g8 attacking the rook. If he just goes down like h8, rook h8, I've got the knight with check. I can take f2, king e1, attacking the rook. I'd have to come back to f8. And then even if he double attacks the knight with his light square bishop, I have my light square bishop to defend. I can get my king over. I think that just wins material. There's no way for him to defend that knight, right? So I either win the rook or the knight. Knight g8. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. There's no attack over here, right? On c6, let's see. Knight moves, king Rook takes, there's bishop takes, no. Bishop takes, there's king takes, no. There's no good knight jumps. I think that's it. Let's see here. Yeah. And then win this with check. Yep. Okay, so what I was talking about though was, if we go back, if knight takes and he pins my knight, usually that'd be good because there's no good knight jump to defend this rook, and I have a light squared bishop, so it's hard to defend this rook. But I have this take with check. So I'm up a lot of material, and if king goes somewhere to attack it, well, now I can take that because the bishop's protecting. But I was saying come back, even if the bishop comes to attack it, I have these two, and there's no way for him to put more pressure against the knight. So he can't win that material back. Even if the king starts to come down, I can just bring my king over to defend it. Cool. All right, so back up to 1931. Let's continue.